Welcome to the Making Up the Numbers podcast. The Making Up the Numbers podcast is sponsored by Hope Technology, Revolution Bike Park, Schwal, and the world's finest independent mountain bike magazine, Singletrack.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a race season on the horizon. I'm Jonny Thompson, and last week the UCI released a revised 2020 Downhill World Cup calendar, which kicks off in Lenzerheide on the 5th of September and finishes in Lucé on the 1st of November. It's a 5-venue, 7-race series with double headers at the final 2 rounds in Maribor and Lucé. Then, in the middle of all that, there's also World Champs in Leogang. In total, it's 8 races in 8 weeks. And tonight on the podcast, we'll be taking a deeper look into the season ahead with 4 special guests. Over the next 90 minutes or so, and with a little bit of help from the technical gods, SR Suntour One Vision's Jack Redding and myself will be talking to the UCI's Simon Burney, Nina Hoffmann, Trek Factory Downhill Team Manager Andrew Shandro, and Fit for Racing's Jonny Thompson to get their thoughts. And we'll be looking at everything from logistics to fitness. But before we roll out the guests, let's room through those dates in detail. We start the season on the 5th and 6th of September in Lenzerheide. Then we head straight to Val di Sole the following weekend, the 12th and 13th of September. Then it's on to Leger, 19th and 20th of September. That's 3 races in 3 weeks. And then there's a week off and everybody can breathe a little bit. World Champs is the following weekend, the 5th to the 11th of October in Leogang. And the following weekend after that is Maribor. And it's a double header, 2 races on one weekend, the 15th to the 18th of October. Then there's a week off before the final venue, another double header in Lucé. Initial thoughts, Jack?
Yeah, very excited. Obviously, we all trained all winter and we were ready to go, and then the brakes got put on. So the last 8 weeks, not really knowing whether we were going to go racing at all this year was, difficult to kind of stay positive, I guess, and stay focused. And yeah, now we've kind of got a light at the end of the tunnel that will hopefully stay there. Just really excited, and the prospect of having all those races so close together is exciting as well, because it's going to make for exciting.
It's going to be unforgettable, isn't it? It's going to, whichever way, it's 8. Everybody will always remember 8 races in 8 weeks. Well, kicking off the show then, let's talk to the UCI Simon Burney. Firstly, Simon, congratulations on getting this revised season together. How difficult was it trying to pull together an 8-race season?
Yeah, there was so much uncertainty. It was just juggling cats the whole last month, really. Not quite understanding what the situation was going to be as things progressed. We had some organisers that straight away pretty much said, we can't do it, we're out. And then the ones that were left, it was just a case of, just trying to figure out who could do what when. And literally every week something was changing. So there was no kind of set criteria to work to. It was just there. But, I think the important thing was just getting something, a line in the sand, getting the calendar out. And I think the reaction has been from everybody. Jack just mentioned it. I think everyone's just excited to see a calendar. I'm not convinced it's going to end up like that, honestly. Right. I think some things will change in the next couple of months that might, affect some countries. Yeah. But I think it was important that the teams and the riders had something to start focusing on and preparing for, because it's just been a lot of uncertainty.
And how close were you to cancelling the whole season?
Never crossed my mind.
No?
No, not at all. I think it's, even if there's 2 races, it's 2 races. And I think everybody just wants to race. And there's so much tied into the racing. Yeah. Sponsors, television. The UCI have got sponsors. We've got partners that we need to satisfy as much as the team managers have with the sponsors and the riders. So, it never crossed my mind. It's think if we can race, we're going to go racing. And it was just a case of trying to work out where and when, really.
Yeah, that's great news, because I think a lot of us probably thought that if it did boil down to the fact that we maybe only had 2 venues or a month, we probably thought we wouldn't bother. But to hear that even for a couple of races, you guys would make it happen, that's great news.
Yeah, we would. And again, I spoke to some riders. I spoke to Greg Minard quite a lot, just to kind of get his feeling for mainly around these double weekends. Yeah. And he kind of really emphasised the fact that a lot of riders are paid by, bonuses for performing. Yeah. And, they're going to lose money if there's only 6 races or 5 races or 3 races. Yeah, we understand that. But, if we can keep adding a race every now and again, and, we can help people, we can give sponsors value for sponsoring teams and riders, and we can, try and get some payback for a wasted 5 or 6 months early in the year.
It's like you said, everybody's got an invested interest. So
yeah.
How keen were the venues to still go ahead? You mentioned that, you know, some of them just straight up cancelled. Were you kind of disappointed that those ones did that?
You know, I think they're all professional event organisers. That's where they're making their living. So they all needed to try. You know, if they could put an event on, they all wanted to. They all knew it was important for their livelihoods as well as for their, you know, for the season. And they're all passionate about the bike racing. So there was no real risk that they were just going to go, oh yeah, we'll just sack it off this year. But I think there were a couple that you know, were pretty straight away said, yeah, we can't really reschedule, we can't go later, the weather might be bad, this might happen, that might happen, and it just felt like, come on guys, you know, just, you know, maybe just push it out a little bit further, just kind of give it another couple of weeks and just see how you're feeling then. But they were, you know, again, you know, they've all got backers, and whether it's the local authority or whatever kind of, and they were, you know, getting information from everywhere, and they were basing their decisions on the information they got at the time. So you can't, you know, it's not a criticism at all. It's just almost a frustration that, you know, there's someone like, come on, you know.
Yeah, you couldn't get them to.
So we can make a season, you know.
Yeah, wait a little bit longer. Let's see where we are in, because everything's happening so fast, isn't it? You know, a few weeks ago it was like things might not be going again until kind of almost the new year in some industries, but now it looks over here like they're planning to open things up in the next few weeks. So
and there's still a lot of unknowns. You know, I think the whole thing now we've got the calendar out, the whole thing is about, okay, will they be able to race with spectators? And we've still got a couple of organisers that are saying, look, if we can't have spectators, if it's 0 spectators, we're probably going to have to pull the plug, because they need the spectators, that they need that income revenue, ticket revenue to make the event work. Some are saying if they get limited by governments to 3,000 spectators, they can do it. So, you know, and again, right now nobody knows all those indefinites, so it's just going to be waiting to see what's possible.
Have you got any venues that have said if there's no spectators that they will be able to run?
We've got one that's saying, yeah, even if we don't get spectators, we're on. And we've got a couple that are just like, it's going to be really difficult if we can't, because again, a lot of them have got sponsors that are saying, because of the problems the last 6 months, we're going to have to maybe cut back on a little bit on sponsorship. So they're losing revenue, and you know that it's not a cheap deal putting a World Cup on. So everybody's kind of trying to make cuts and try to make sacrifices to make it happen. And I think the organisers are, you know, they want to do it. And so if they can't, it's for very, very good reasons. The ones we've got now, you know.
Okay. Are we at the stage now where you guys are starting to look at measures to keep riders and event staff and the people involved safe, or is that later down the line?
That literally started yesterday. So the first conversations about it, and again, that's going to progress as we understand better. Which each country is different. Each country are going to have different measures in place, even as far as, you know, traveling across borders and travel restrictions and things. So I think in the next 2 months, I think again we're only at the end of May now. We've still got a couple of months before, you know, hard decisions have to be, well, not hard decisions, but decisions about spectators, you know, safety, health, those kind of things. And I think a lot will change in that time. Our medical director's working on a kind of protocols across the whole of cycling. So even if it's a road race or an early season cyclocross or the mountain bike races, BMX, everything. So, you know, we're going to have stuff in place that we're going to have across the board for cycling. And then obviously we'll have to take in whatever the organisers come back with based on their country. So each country is going to have, you know, maybe slightly different variations on a theme as well. And even, you know, I was talking to the Red Bull guys today about television, and, you know, how many people they can put in a production unit, how many people are on the OB truck. It's all going to change. And it's a lot of things that we're not thinking about right now that are going to affect. So, you know, even Red Bull are saying, okay, we're going to have to think out the box and try to be creative about where we do some of the production. We might have to send some signals back to Austria to produce it there, because we can't literally have 8 people sitting within a 20-meter OB truck. You know what I mean? So it's there's a lot of things to think about.
And it's, that is my industry. I'm, you know, event production, filming, etc. And I've had to write a risk assessment this weekend for a 2-person shoot, and it's just phenomenal. You know, it's like 40-page document on just 2 persons to shoot. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
You briefly mentioned border crossings, and obviously that will be what it will be nearer the time. What will happen if, say, for example, America's borders are still closed? Would an event in Europe still go ahead if American riders, for example, couldn't make the event?
Yeah, I think so. I think yeah, it'd be hard on the Americans, absolutely, and it would be a shame for the event. But I don't think one nation necessarily being able to travel, not being able to travel, is necessarily a reason not to have an event for, you know, maybe 25 nations in Europe that can make it. Yeah. I think what the situation would be is how you look at things like UCI points and kind of how that would affect not necessarily that event that weekend. I think people want to go racing and they want to see it, but you know, if some people not being able to travel meant that something next year was going to get compromised, then we just have to bear that in mind and be kind of really mindful about making sure it's fair at the beginning of next season, that, you know, everyone's starting off on the same foot as they would if it had been a regular season.
Yeah. Okay. And obviously we're going until the 1st of November. Was that cut off based around weather and things like that? Or was that venues just saying these are when we can do and when we can't do? Yeah,
I think everywhere, everywhere but Portugal is pretty much a ski area. And I think a lot of them were nervous about going into November because of the weather. Portugal, it just made complete sense to put that one as late as we could go. So we kind of went Maribor weekend off, so that people, again, mainly for television, they couldn't get from Maribor to Portugal in time to start setting up for that one. So again, it just meant there was a week break. I think Maribor are going to put an IXS Cup on in that gap. For anybody who wants to stay in Maribor, it just gives time to people to either travel or do whatever. So it was difficult to put a ski area in kind of after later in November.
The weather could change things up quite a bit, couldn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Could be some wild racing, and it might really favour those who kind of excel in the mud.
Yeah. No, there's gonna be so many different things, like this. That I was talking to some cross-country riders on a program over the weekend, and they're talking about the same kind of thing. It's just you can't go in too hot because you got 6 or 7 weeks of really intense racing, recovery, travel. Everything's going to have to be really well thought about. You're going to have to be optimal in all these little details, and if you come in a little bit overfit, you're not going to recover. If you come in a little bit tired, you're probably not going to recover. So it's going to be interesting, and the weather can add so much to an event as well. So
it is going to be kind of doubly difficult for privateers with kind of such a tight schedule, with all the travel and the setup and the doing everything themselves.
Sure.
It makes it that bit doubly difficult, doesn't it?
Big adventure though, for those guys.
Indeed. The final 2 venues, they each have 2 races. What will the schedule be for those?
Not confirmed right now. We're still waiting for the organisers and television to kind of confirm it. But the plan is walking on Tuesday, training on Wednesday, training and quali on Thursday, finals for the first one on Friday. Training on Saturday morning, quali Saturday afternoon, finals on 2 on Sunday.
I guess the big question there is it the same track for both races?
So we can't change significantly because we can't change TV camera points.
Right.
So, but again, with the downhill, you can do some really sort of smart, small line changes that just kind of keep it interesting.
They could tape it quite differently, couldn't they?
Well, literally, you just have to move something a metre, and the TV camera still gets it, but it's a different line. It's something that's maybe not been ridden in. It can make a lot of difference just with a few little changes. And I think that's the kind of thing we'd look at. And again, for time, if we're going to finish Friday's final at, 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, training will start early on Saturday morning. There's not an awful lot of time to make big changes either. So it'd just be little small things just to kind of freshen it up.
Yeah, and they're good. They're 2 good venues to do that as well. Both Maribor and Loser have got they've got tracks real close together, and the ground's really easy to work. So
exactly.
But like Leogang, it maybe be a little bit harder, but those 2 it'll be.
We'll have that problem in Leogang.
No. Yeah, there you go.
Although that's going to I just heard today that's they're going to make some changes to that downhill course as well, hopefully for Worlds.
That needs freshening up for sure. So I'm guessing from what you said before about discussing with Greg, a lot of the thinking behind the double headers was getting riders more points and more opportunity to hit their bonuses. Is that?
Yeah, basically. I think, just a chance to race more. Again, you guys, you're at a World Cup venue for a few days, and there's one race. And I think if there's an opportunity, exceptional circumstances have brought it about. And again, I kind of took a bit of advice from one of my colleagues who's a ski racer. And, she said, yeah, we do double races, at ski World Cups. Have a think about it. And, she spoke to Miriam, and I spoke to Greg, and yeah, kind of why not? Honestly, it's just one of these things. We'll try it. If everyone loves it, we can do it again. But yeah, maybe it's something to take forward. If it doesn't work, it's something that doesn't work in a season where a lot of things have gone bad. So it's not really.
That was our next question. Do you think it'll be something that if it goes well, you'd carry on over into following seasons?
Yeah. Why not? Why not? It doesn't really add to the significant costs to anybody. It's maybe an extra hotel night for riders. Yeah. It's an extra day for TV, which is quite a bit of a knock-on cost. But I think if the feedback's good, why not?
Yeah.
And Red Bull will be showing, like you said, they'll be showing both races.
They will. Yeah.
Each double header. Yeah.
They will. Yeah.
Awesome.
And you mentioned at the start that even if it goes down to kind of it ended up being a 2-race season, that would be a season. Is that as low as it could go, kind of?
Well, no, I think it's not for us to cancel races. I think that's the other big thing. I think the UCI, we're formulating the calendar based on events that are out there, and it's for the organisers to decide if they can put their race on. If there's only a couple of races and we decide to, the World Cup overall isn't really worth basing on 2 rounds, or we have to make a decision about that. But I don't think we're not going to say, well, there's only 2 races, let's not have any. That's not really that's not my attitude to it at all. I think 2 races are better than no races.
Yeah.
So I think, the more we can do, the better. Really.
And I think, like you said, we just got to be so reactive. Everything's changing, and rather than just bury your head in the sand and go, it's just about being reactive and go, right, what's the best we can do from the situation?
I think just being a little bit open-minded about, a completely new situation for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's the response been like? Has it been as positive as we think it is?
Yeah, I think so. I think just like I said earlier on, I think it's just the fact that the riders have got something to aim for. And I think just having that light at the end of the tunnel has been really positive. And when you work for the UCI, you don't really get the good side of reactions. You just get the kind of the crappy side of it. People say, oh yeah, it's UCI, that's rubbish. And I haven't had any of those. No one said this calendar sucks. Yeah. So I think just based on that, it kind of proves that it's gone down quite well.
I think. I mean, I'm in a few WhatsApp groups, and you've made a lot of people very happy just by the fact that there is a calendar there.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
Just fans of racing, people who are just, everybody's. It's a bit shit for everybody at the minute, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any bit of joy that you can find is great, really, to have.
Absolutely. So. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for coming on the show, Simon. It's really much appreciated.
Sure
We'll be doing another show with Simon in August, just before the racing kicks off. So if any listeners do have questions for him, please drop us a message on Instagram at Making Up the Numbers Racing, and we'll be sure to ask him them. We'll be talking to Nina Hoffmann after these messages. Next up, we have a lady who burst on the World Cup scene in 2019 with a 3rd place at Fort William, and then grabbed 2nd a week later in Leogang, 5th in Leger, and finished 4th in the overall. Welcome to the show, Nina Hoffmann.
Hi.
Nice to have you on the show.
Yeah.
Have you been dealing with the lockdown?
Yeah, I just took it pretty easy. So I tried to don't stress myself. I tried to do the things which was possible to do, try to train and keep the motivation high, which was a bit hard at the beginning. But then I started to do new things, to try new things. And for example, I now started riding motocross.
Nice.
So because it's now possible, and just try to learn new things and to improve yourself. There are always things you can improve.
You're in Germany, aren't you, at the moment?
Yeah, I'm in Germany.
Has it been pretty strict, the lockdown
So it was a bit different to every federal state, and
Right.
here in Thuringia, yeah, it was like you only could, or you were not allowed to meet another person only if it was family, but actually also not this. And yeah, you should only go out for buying things, but you were allowed to do sports. So I went a lot of cycling outside because I was allowed to do this, and which I was pretty happy about. But
Yeah.
for example, the persons in Bavaria, I think they weren't allowed to go cycling. I don't know, so it was a bit different in every area.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I said in the intro that you kind of burst onto the scene last season, but you only raced 4 rounds in 2018, and you had a couple of 6th place finishes in Val di Sole and the Bresse. Were you kind of surprised by your results in 2019?
Yeah, a bit. I definitely was surprised. But the 6th places were already a big surprise for me because it was my first World Cup season, and then I thought like, okay, my goal was to get a top 10 overall in 2019, and then I got a 6th place again in Maribor, the first World Cup, and was like, okay,
right.
This is a good start. But then you have to admit there were many or few ladies out of racing, and I think this helped me to get such good places. But yeah, in the end, they are standing there.
So,
and I'm
you've only you only start racing in 2015?
Yeah, this was my first year racing 3 races.
Wow.
Was actually also the year where I really started mountain biking.
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
Cool.
You'd only raced Leogang and Val di Sole before, so kind of like before last season. What was it like having to learn the majority of kind of the World Cup tracks? Did you feel like you were at a disadvantage?
I never, or I tried to not feel like this. So I tried to, for example, Fort William is a track which is pretty much the same every year. So I watched many videos of people riding it before, tried to learn the upper section, which really, really helped me because there are so many rocks and every rock looks the same. But this was pretty good. And I've always done very slow track walks and try to remember everything on track walks so that I don't have to do this many runs. It was hard for me in Andorra a bit at the beginning because this was such a long track and it was hard to find good videos to watch before. But I watched a lot of GoPro runs after my first practices and practice runs. So this helped me a lot, and I think it's just a bit of extra work in the evening, and then you will get it.
And were there any tracks in particular that you struggled with, or?
Val di Sole, I think. So I raced it in 2018 and I really loved it because everybody said it's such a rough track and it's so hard, and I didn't felt like it was so hard. But in 2019, I don't know, I had so many problems because it was wet and it was, I don't know, so physical. And then this crash in my final run gave me the rest.
Well, when we had Valley on a few weeks ago, she said that, it was just Val di Sole was the hardest. I think
it is the hardest. It's everybody says Fort William is pretty hard because it's so long, but in my opinion, it's definitely Val di Sole the hardest one.
And which track are you most kind of looking forward to going back to?
Andorra.
Yeah.
Well, why not? Yeah, this was it was my best qualifying result with the first place there, and it was just a super smooth and normal run. And I really like the combination of fast parts in the beginning and then steep ones and technical, and just has everything in it, and I love it.
Yeah, you've got some unfinished business there, like you say, because you qualified first with your impressive time, and it was only your second season. How did you feel sat in the start gate for finals, last lady down the hill?
Actually, I tried to push this feeling away from me, to just feel like, okay, you're just racing another race run and don't think too much about it. And actually, it worked okay for me, so I didn't felt that much of the pressure. I just tried to focus on myself, and but then the thing with the shoe happened in my race run. And the third thing I thought at this moment was that it was like, oh no, this is not happening in your first run down as the last girl down the hill. So this was, but okay.
Did you learn a lot from that experience?
I learned a lot from the whole season last year.
Yeah.
I've had so many different experiences, from highs to lows to injuries to crashes and also to good race runs. So there was a lot. I've also learned to tie to my shoes.
Yeah, that's an important one. Yeah, as you say, I mean, being relatively very inexperienced compared with the girls who are riding at your level, you are going to spend a lot of the season learning just lesson after lesson, because you're learning new tracks, you're learning how to race, you're getting faster, it's going wrong, it's going right. So yeah, I'm sure every weekend has been a new learning experience. Yeah. We've seen that you've spent a bit of time with the syndicate last season. Were they giving you advice? And if so, what kind of things have you picked up from the syndicate?
Yeah, they definitely helped me a lot. Just with easy things like getting some lunch or getting a bit of physio, but also advices. So Kathy is a super, I mean, she's so long into this sport now, and she's so many advices for me. And we talked a lot about dealing with pressure and staying calm on race weekends. And I also learned a lot, or a bit. I talked to Craig in Léger, because Léger was a hard weekend for me, because I crashed in qualies and had a lot of pain in my ankle and in my elbow, and I wasn't feeling like racing on Sunday. I was on Saturday anyway. And I was pretty not self-confident, and he gave me my self-confidence back with just talking to me 5 minutes. Just saying, you're able to do this, just keep it easy, do a safe run, nothing special, just write down and it will be good. So
he's quite a calming influence, Greg, isn't he?
Definitely super calm
person. It's So when we had Tani on the podcast, coming back to what you said about some of the girls not racing last year, she talked about yourself and Marianne and maybe a couple of others stepping up their game. Did it feel different psychologically when those girls weren't there?
Maybe not consciously, but maybe unconsciously, so that you were able to do now a podium or even a third or second place, and this pushes you harder than if you are maybe getting a fifth or a sixth or seventh place. So I didn't really thought about this, but definitely, unconsciously it influenced.
Did you ride different?
And you also were more in the media and more on the focus of the media, and everybody was talking about you, and this also
made it more exciting. I can relate to that, because whenever I'm on the live stream in finals, I always feel differently in my the build up to the finals run. And whereas if I've qualified, if I've had a bad qualifier and I'm not having a good weekend and I've qualified 45th or something, it just doesn't feel the same in the finals. You just kind of whereas if you've qualified 15th, you're like, right, let's go.
Nobody cares.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not nobody, but not so many people.
I guess a question I want to ask you after what Tani said, and do you feel that you actually rode faster? Because Tani said that those spots aren't taken and they're there anyway. Do you feel that not having those girls there actually made you guys do faster runs that you would have done than you would have done if those girls weren't there? Understand the question?
This is a hard question, because you don't know how you would have raced when these girls would have been there. But what me really pushed was the A practice. So I had the possibility to step into A practice. And this was the first time in Leo Gang. And it really pushed me, because I was able to ride now with the very fast guys, so like you, and this was so cool to it was cool to watch the lines which were they racing, and that there was just one line in Leo Gang, and I didn't know if I could do this, and then I saw all the guys riding it, and it looked so easy, and then I just tried it and I did it, and it was such a faster line than the other one. So this is just one example where I think it helped that the other girls weren't there. And maybe racing for a first, second, or third place, then you're a bit more motivated than going for a 7th or 8th.
Yeah.
Would you have had timed practice normally, or was the timed practice session an addition for you as well, being ranked higher?
So I had time practice the first time in Fort William, I think. Yeah,
So
not the Maribor because was
top
my
5 women
no time 15.
on the first day for time practice. It is top 15.
Yeah, the top 15. So yeah.
Okay, so
And this the thing with the A practice was the first time that they did it in 2019.
Yeah, I remember that. Just to explain to the listeners very quickly what we're
exactly.
talking about there
So
with
time
the
practice.
practice.
Time practice for the first 15.
The B practice starts at 8:30 in the morning and goes until 11:30 in the morning. If you're in B practice, that's you. Whereas if you're in A practice, you start at 11:45 and you go until 3:15. So as you said, instead of going up the track to walk and watch in A practice, you're able to be there riding. You can then try the lines that you've seen at the time, which just makes such a big difference. So
also weather conditions, it's often wet in the morning, especially while Isolde, for example.
Which just changes the game, and it makes it so much harder for the men. And it's something that I do want to just kind of raise with Simon in August is that it's if there's men practicing in B practice and not practicing in A practice, and they do all of their practice in the wet, we practice in the dry, and then it's qualifying in the dry. It's not fair. It's not a level playing field. I think it's very, very interesting that they can split categories into different sections and give them different conditions to prepare in it. It's like giving one guy a bike that's too small for him and one guy a bike that fits him. This
is still a big discussion point also during the season. And this was also the reason why then all girls who qualified, so all 15 girls, got the possibility for A practice on Sunday, on race day. So this was a compromise because it was not fair if you're only able, because for us, if you're in B practice, you're often only able to train in the wet, and then it's dry when you do your race run. This is just not fair.
Just a game changer. Sorry, George, I've tangented there.
No. just looking at this, you've done really, really well, haven't you? Like a second season, really. Not even in some ways, it wasn't even a second season because you hadn't done a lot of the tracks before.
Yeah.
You must be really, really pleased with how it went last year.
I am.
Well,
I can't complain.
On to 2020 then. When those #team rumors started at the end of the season, I think pretty much everyone thought you'd be joining the syndicate. They've never had a female rider. You look to be a great fit for their brand. Is there any reasons in particular why that didn't materialize?
There's nothing particular. There are many reasons fitting together, and smaller and bigger ones. And I don't want to name something, but it's just not at the time for me at the moment. So let's wait.
You've set up your own team. Has that changed your approach in any way?
So I really wanted to stay with Santa Cruz, and they gave me a good offer in that way, and so I then just said I will do it by my own.
So it's kind of on your own, but you have got the support still from Santa Cruz.
Of course, and from Stiff and so on. So there are still and I have my own mechanic now, and I have a team manager who cares a lot for me and all the organization and stuff. So
are you in your own pits, or are you pitting next to the syndicate, or are you?
No, I registered my own UCI team, so I have my own pit space. I have my own easy up tent and my car and stuff. So I'm like my own mini team.
Okay. And will there be any major changes to the bike or your sponsors for 2020?
So I have Bluegrass now as my helmet sponsor, and I got my first custom helmet from them.
Lovely.
Which is pretty cool. And this is, I think, the major or the biggest one, and Stiff is the main sponsor now.
Yeah.
Which is the company. And this includes Santa Cruz, Troyana, and the reserve wheels, which I'm also running now.
Cool.
How did the Stiff contact come about? Because Stiff quite close to us in the UK here. I've got 2 friends who ride for the team. So how did that come about?
Yeah, it came from Santa Cruz in the end. So they are pretty close with Stiff, and they wanted to try to push Stiff a bit more, and so I'm trying to do this now and to promote them on the World Cups, and they're pretty cool people. I also visited them in February or January it was.
Yeah, so you were.
Yeah.
Well, the big question we all want to know is, will you be racing the V10 MX or are you on the 29?
Probably not.
Have you had any access to it?
Not at the moment.
Oh.
I hope I get one soon.
See, this just shows how much of a tech geek I'm not. I literally don't even know what you're talking about. Is there a new Santa Cruz?
Yeah, the new V10 with the.
Sorry, I'm behind the times.
Yeah, it's a mullet in the sense. I don't think Greg's not riding a mullet. Is
No,
it?
Greg's riding.
Never ride a mullet. See how long his legs are.
But the other 2 are Loris and Luca. They're both riding a mullet. Is it a new back end? Same front end, new back end. Yeah. Yeah.
That'll be helpful for Loris, I imagine.
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay. So you tore a ligament in your shoulder just before World Champs, which unfortunately ended your 2019 season. Hopefully you've fully recovered from that injury now?
I did, yes. But I just partially torn this tendon. So this made me or prevented me from surgery. So I just did it or recovered by physio, moving stuff. I read a lot about how the shoulder works, and I also did a lot of physio by myself and learned a lot about movement and stuff. Also for my whole body, this injury just influenced me a lot in all this mobility stuff, also for other joints and things. So it was pretty helpful actually in the end. And the shoulder feels better than before now.
Nice. So you turned it into a positive. That's cool.
Definitely.
Okay. So the UCI has released its revised calendar, which obviously we're all very excited about. What was your initial reaction when you saw the calendar?
I was super happy to finally have a goal now.
Yes, exactly.
So I was like, yeah, there will be a race season. I can show what I've trained all winter and summer now. So I was pretty happy, but when I saw the whole schedule, I'm a bit I hope I think it will be a long one or a tough one because so many races and the double rounds in the end. I'm a bit I don't know if this really works well with the double rounds, but let's see.
Yeah, exactly. And I think everybody's in the same boat, aren't we?
Yeah.
So if some people were doing half of them, and then you'd obviously be at a disadvantage. But we've all got to manage our fitness through there. So as you said, we're training hard, so hopefully we'll be all right. And
but it's going to be tough. Because you don't really have time to train again, so you have to actually just race this 8 weeks. So
just ride the wave.
Yeah.
But it's the same for everyone. So
we were just talking to Simon before, Simon Burney, and we said we talked a little bit that it might be more difficult for privateers just because, with the travel and the setup, with it being back to back to back, week after week, it might be harder.
It might be, but for example, we are starting with Lenzerheide and then Valdisola and Léger. This is pretty much the same venues as actually planned, and then you have 2 weeks of rest, and then Leogang, which is not too far away from my home, easy, and then to Maribor is also easy. Just the last venue, Loser, is a bit far away, and I don't know if I go there by car again because I was already down there.
Oh yeah,
in March.
Anytime.
So I don't know if I will fly there, but then I have to organize how to get my pit down there. I don't know how to do this yet.
What are you like riding in the mud?
I like riding in the mud.
Yeah, because it could be a really, really weather affected season with it being so much later. It could be, we're used to seeing World Cups on dry and dusty tracks in the main.
Yeah.
It could be pretty crazy.
Could be a question about riding in the snow. In Maribor, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you think the shorter season will benefit anyone in particular? Any particular riders?
I don't know. I mean, I would have been maybe happy about finishing with World Champs in Leogang and just let Maribor and Loser out. But I'm also happy I really like Maribor, and also the track in Loser was cool. So I just, fingers crossed for the weather. I just worry about the weather at the moment.
Yeah.
So, for example, sunrise is at 7 or 7:30 in Maribor, and when B practice starts at 8 a.m.
That's
Hopefully
a
it will
fair
be
point.
enough. But it will work somehow. Everybody has to deal with the same problems, so we will get it done anyway.
Have you started booking any of your travel or accommodation, or are you waiting to get a bit closer to the time?
I booked accommodations. I am always a person who wants to be prepared.
Yeah.
So I booked. So I already had one for Valisola and Léger, and I changed my one for a Leogang, and I also had a connection to Loser to this accommodation. Yeah, and also Lenzerheide, because if you wait there, then you will just have to get or to take a pretty expensive one.
Remortgage house. I'm sleeping in the street in Lenzerheide, that's for sure.
This is not what I want to do, so better be safe and then
absolutely.
Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. What's your strategy with your fitness now between now and the start of the season in September? I think we're about 12 weeks out.
It's actually so I done a few blocks of a more endurance and general training, because I also hadn't the possibility to go to a good gym. So I just did a lot of circle training, endurance, road cycling and stuff. And now I'm starting to do more downhill, also things like intervals, pump tracks, sprints, and these stuff. So like actually just like another complete winter training. So I did my winter training, went to Loser, came back, did 1 week of rest, and then just started another one. So and it actually fits perfectly to the first race. So cool. I think I will be double fit then. No, but you know what I mean.
Cool. Yeah, well, thanks very much for making the time to chat, Nina. Best of luck for 2020 and going forward from that. Where's the best place for people to follow your progress? Is it Instagram?
Yeah, it's Instagram.
And it's at nina.hfm96, is that right?
That's correct.
Cool. We'll be back shortly with Trek Factory Racing's Andrew Shandro. Next up, we have a legend of the sport. He's a 2-time Downhill World Cup winner, 4-time Canadian National Downhill Champion, and X Games gold medalist for Bike-Across, and he's currently the Trek Factory Racing Downhill Team Manager. Welcome to the show, Andrew Shandro.
Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Nice. First question, Andrew. Please, can you just confirm for relative newbies to the sport like me, what's Bike-Across?
Well, actually, Bike-Across was in the X Games style. I think it was more like 4 people at a time, you know?
Oh, so like 4-cross, yeah.
It's like 4-cross, same kind of thing. When the one that I won was just 2 people at a time. I mean, to be honest, it was it was kind of funny, really, right? Like, it's on snow.
All right, okay.
Yeah, so it wasn't your typical event, I would say. They held it, I think, for 2-3 years, and then it kind of took some time off, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I ended up winning it back in like whenever it was, 99 or 2000 on snow in Crested Butte, Colorado, and yeah, it's pretty funny, to be honest.
It's nice to have an X Games gold medal. There's not many people who have those.
On snow, yeah.
So, how has a big team like Trek been dealing with the lockdown?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I think like everyone, we've all had sort of mixed emotions. You know, initially you're like, "Well, this COVID is I guess hard to like anticipate what's going to happen." You know, I think that's the hardest thing is the moving target for everybody.
Yeah.
From I think on the athletes, staff, obviously, but just like as athletes, you know, everyone has a goal in mind. They're training, they're all like ready to go, and then all of a sudden it's shut down. So I would say that's probably the hardest on everyone, and then the unknown of what's going to happen next. So, yeah, I mean, obviously the UCI. I don't know if you want to talk about that now or wait, but the UCI with the new schedule that's been released, you know.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed that we'll be racing this year. So there was a lot of cancellation of flights and hotels and logistics. Like everybody would have been in the same boat, and then we've just been kind of rebooking, holding off on flights, but getting hotels and accommodation sorted and whatnot and logistics. But yeah, it's been interesting. Yeah.
Definitely an unknown, something we've not experienced before.
Yeah, the unknown of it all is, it's, again, I think everyone has their good days and their bad days, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, taking us back in time a little bit, Andrew, I was a massive fan of the collective movie Seasons. I was actually living in Whistler at the time that came out. Was that a good time filming that?
Oh yeah, the Whistler segment. The Whistler segment specifically. I mean, that was. I don't think we knew how special it was until kind of later on, you know, after the fact. But to have Stevie Smith, obviously a part of it, being like an 18 or 19-year-old Grom at the time. I think that's how old he was. Maybe I'm wrong by a few years. And then Steve Pete and Call and the whole crew and Thomas and Matt. And no, that was a special one. We sort of had the mountain to ourselves. It was in the fall when we shot it.
Nice. Lots of like top riders together. I bet it got pretty wild on the hill while you were filming.
Yeah, some wild moments for sure. Yeah, I know Stevie and Cam scared us all a few times, you know, and it got wild at night too. As you can
with Petey around, I guess there's no escaping that. In your segment, there's a little ripper that can't be much older than 6 or 7 at the time. I actually rewatched the segment the other day. Is that a young Ethan who we're now seeing?
That's the young Ethan. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a trail it's actually just over to the side of the house here that we kind of fixed up a little bit. It's only like a short little minute and a half but he would ride sometimes to school through it down into the school.
Nice.
I would take him that way, but yeah, he gravitated to bikes early for sure.
Nice. Yeah, I guess there was no escaping the mountain bikes for him.
Yeah, just bikes around and just sort of, you know, he took to it himself, you know, like it was just sort of
his choice.
Yeah.
Did he always have his heart set on going to race World Cups, or did he toy with other ideas in terms of professional riding?
Yeah, specifically to riding for sure. He's more of a racer. So yeah, I think his goal was always to get to that sort of World Cup race level.
Yeah.
He was a good athlete in other sports as well, you know?
Yeah.
So he sort of, which I think, you know, most athletes can kind of pick and choose a little bit to some degree, but yeah, he always sort of had his mindset on racing. Yeah.
Nice. And you've obviously been with Trek for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Tough question, I guess. Do you think you would have taken the job as Trek team manager if Ethan wasn't riding for the team? Was that a part of that decision?
Yeah, for sure it's a part of it, but so I'm sort of like there's a few of us that are involved with this program. Ryan Gall, who's one of the managers, and he does a lot of the heavy lifting. He works out of the Trek HQ in Wisconsin. He's a really good guy. He's a good friend of mine, but we sort of co-manage. So I take on some and he takes on some. But I think the fact that I've been with Trek so long, like you mentioned, and I've worked with a lot of athletes through my time, you know, that when Trek decided that they wanted to take the program in-house, they needed to have lean on some people that understood the sport and understand athletes and the nuances of how it works. So I was sort of, asked to some degree, like, would you be involved in? So regardless of Ethan or not, my plan was to help, Track's been an incredible company to work with, and, so I'm proud to help them wherever I can, right?
Nice.
Yeah.
Ethan looks like a fantastic prospect. Were you surprised when he took second at his first World Cup?
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, you never really know, to be honest.
No.
Like, I mean, I knew he was good. I take the dad cap off and try not to like tout him or anything. I sort of like, I've always tried to. I mean, it's hard as a parent, to not be proud and talk about your kid, but I try to like just let his riding sort of do the talking, I guess.
Yeah.
So I knew he was really good, and I know he's got that talent. He's also got the drive, really, to be honest. He's got a work ethic that far exceeded mine, I think.
How hard is it kind of having your son on the team and being the dad?
Oh, there's challenging moments for sure.
Yeah.
To balance it all, and to be the dad, but then be the pet manager and like work with the other guys, and
yeah.
But no, it's hard if there's people in the sport, like, I mean, Tony Seagrave would say the same thing, the challenge of it, but then the upside and the positives, I think far outweighs the negative, so yeah.
Cool. Well, Trek kind of as a brand it's been synonymous with established names. I remember Aaron Gwynn being on the team, the Athertons, obviously. But last season, you went with a different approach in the downhill side, like a young guns kind of approach. What inspired that decision?
Well, I think we needed a fresh start. We wanted a fresh look, and sort of, again, we did want to have sort of a younger, I guess, malleable team to some degree. We wanted a group that we could help develop and just sort of easy to work with on a number of different levels. Charlie had been on Trek previously in his career. We knew that he had, obviously he has pace and the talent and the work ethic, the drive, and all those things that you want out of an athlete. And then with Reese, again, a younger guy showing some talent, had some solid results the previous year.
Yeah.
For when we had him. And then obviously Cade is a beauty. I've always been a fan of Cade, and I work with, I sort of, I feel like I understand those athletes. I work with this, my part of my role has been managing the C3 team since the beginning of the program with Cam McCall was the first guy that we got on board, and then it was Brandon, and anyways, the number of athletes, Brett, Casey, Emil now. So I've worked with all those type of athletes and knew how they work. And so, and he's a talent, obviously.
Yeah, very, very much so. Yeah. You must have been happy with the first season. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I think there's a lot of moving parts involved with a World Cup program. For anyone that's involved with it and managing a team or a privateer, even for that level, I have a lot of respect for the privateers that are out there and trying to make it happen, because it's incredibly hard, So we were proud of it, and I think we kind of proved ourselves. It was the right move, and we got some results. I know that we can get more. I think overall we were like extremely happy with how it went.
Yeah, it was definitely a solid start for those guys. Charlie was a man on a mission last year for sure. I remember seeing his speed trackside when I was riding myself in Maribor, and it was clear he was kind of wanting big things from himself.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Charlie. What's he like on a World Cup weekend?
Well, Charlie is, he sticks to his program, he doesn't deviate from his plan. He sticks to his plan. He trains incredibly hard. He's very disciplined, just in terms of going to bed, timing of going to bed, getting up, sticking to his plan, his diet. And that doesn't work for everybody, but it works for him, I think I think he's just sort of like, I don't know if he came in wanting to prove it or just make sure, prove to himself, but then prove to the team, like, this is why you guys, kept me or picked me up. I think he just came in with a mission, like you mentioned. I know Maribor, unfortunately, I wasn't there, but he came in with just like, okay, I'm going to get it done. So yeah, he was flying that weekend. But yeah, he's been incredible, and I think it's been good for the other guys on the team to see how he works and the way he approaches a race weekend.
Yeah, when we had Reese and Cade on the podcast at the back end of last season, they said that he was quite different to them, and they had picked up quite a lot of stuff from him.
Yeah,
just how focused he was.
Yeah, no, for sure, he's incredibly focused. And again, it doesn't work for everyone. Like, he's definitely on one side of the spectrum, and Cade might be on the other. Reese is sort of in the middle, and then Ethan is probably more, I don't know. I mean, he's still a kid, but he's actually probably closer to like Reese, Charlie zone, in that area.
Yeah.
But I think everyone has has a plan and how they approach the weekend. But he's been amazing with the other guys. So
cool. So what are your thoughts on the revised UCI dates?
I mean, it's going to be a busy few months, that's for sure. If we go racing, it's going to be taxing, I think. Yeah, I mean, just from going to not racing for so long and then to bam right into it, and there's a few weekends off in there, but I think it's going to be challenging in a lot of ways. I mean, for the North Americans and Australians and Kiwis, I mean, you're away. You could be potentially in Europe for 10 weeks?
Yeah.
If you look at going a bit early, and then by the time, and you won't come home just based off of like quarantine. And we don't know all this, obviously. This is to be determined with what the various countries are saying in terms of quarantine and whatnot. But yeah, it's gonna be challenging. I think it's gonna be amazing if we can make it happen and pull it off. And but I really hope it happens.
Well, we've just had Simon on the show, and he said he's still not 100% sure that every date's gonna happen. There's still the events are still dependent on certain things happening. Like whether they can have spectators, etc. So you said before that you had to cancel a lot of flights, a lot of accommodation. How far have you committed to the 2020 season so far, and when will you kind of go full commitment on the flights, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, accommodation is done, so we're locked in there for everything. Some of the places were, we just held we held all the places, and then we just had to rebook essentially, right?
Yeah.
So
there
wasn't too much work in terms of finding places. Everybody would have been in the same boat, just rebooking, but and then just the staffing issue, and we share some staffing and logistics with the other programs like C and Enduro. So just figuring that out. And then flights, I haven't booked any flights and don't plan on booking flights probably for another, at least to the beginning of July, I would say.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little later. We'll see.
From a logistics point of view, has the whole lockdown thing made it hard to get the parts together for the team, or were you pretty much ready to go?
Yeah, no, we were pretty much ready to go. We had bikes. I mean, everything sits in the European office, which is in Belgium.
Right.
I think it's in Belgium. Yeah, I was gonna say Netherlands, Belgium, but so we have everything there. There was a few little things, but for the most part, we're pretty sorted. And we were fortunate enough to get a team camp in February in France with the SRAM crew and Rock Chalk crew, and which is awesome. So we got bikes. Everyone has their home bikes, and then the team bikes are on the rigs in Europe. So,
cool.
But for the most part, we're pretty good. Yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
So obviously the whole season is now in Europe.
Yeah.
Logistically, it's the only way they could get away with it.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that in terms of, do you think some European riders will have an advantage over, like you said, North American, or do you think it'll all even out?
Yeah, I mean, be it if you're a North American rider, you'll miss home a little bit, but I think everyone's going to be pretty much in the same boat. I think you're going to be on the road. Yes, there'll be maybe some riders will be able to go home for a weekend. I think, like, again, there's only 2 free weekends in there or something. So it's not really, I don't think it's much of an advantage, Yeah. I think everybody will adapt and be on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What kind of strategy will you guys have between the races? Because obviously, like you said, you'll have to stay out in Europe. Will you do specific things to keep the guys fresh, or?
Yeah, we're looking at that right now. I mean, obviously moving to a few different locations, whether we post up and we go to Ligier, Morzine before Switzerland, if Switzerland happens. And then after, I think in between there, I don't know if we'll go to Austria early or whatnot, but I think it'll be important certainly to be aware of just the fact that we're traveling together and for that long, give people space and try to have a little bit of fun, which we always do with this crew, Yeah. So, you'll just have to probably be a little more conscious of that,
Yeah. Cool. What's your feeling on the double headers at the end of the season?
Yeah, I think it's they're freaking going to be wild, hey? It's going to be there's going to be a lot of, it's going to be intense. Yeah. But I think it happens in the ski racing world, They'll do double weekends and stuff. And so I think you just approach it the same way. It's another race and you just carry on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. We're all kind of familiar with the expression "looks like a session."
Yeah.
It's probably the most copied bike on the circuit, but we haven't seen an updated version for a few seasons now. What can you let us in on what the boys will be racing this season? Is it a mullet version, or are they on the same this year?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've been playing around with a few different things, Yeah. I know Reese likes that feel a little bit more. He's got a longer torso, shorter legs.
Yeah.
So depending on how it fits, really, to be honest. But yeah, I don't want to tell you too much, but we're always playing around with things.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, working on new things potentially. So,
can you let us into what your kind of aspirations are for the team this season?
Yeah, to be honest, I just want to see us all racing together. We had some injuries last year, and just everybody together racing, and just sort of for the guys, I just want to we try to give them everything they can for success, and I just want to see everybody have a fair crack at it, and try to build on obviously some of the results we had last year. I do think that they're all capable of more. Obviously, Charlie with a couple podiums that were like, within us half a second, 3/4 of a second of the win, first. Yeah. So it's tight racing, as you guys know. The men's field is ridiculously deep. So yeah, I just kind of want to all see them try to just keep cracking on.
Nice. So we've mentioned Cade briefly. I've got to ask. He's obviously such a talent, and he tries his hand at so many different sub-disciplines within mountain biking, whether he's on his dirt jump bike or sending it off something crazy or racing downhill. Do you guys at Trek try and focus him or manage him during the year to control him a little bit, or is he just left to be a free spirit?
I think Cade operates better when he has the freedom to do what he wants, when there's expectations for sure, like that he's, when he's at the race weekend and it's time to get on with it. But I think Cade, what's best for him is to have that freedom, So I think having the structure of the World Cup program and the staff and all of us to sort of help him with things, and because being a free ride athlete or someone that's managing your own stuff, and whether it's film shoots, photo shoots, your sponsors, it's a fair bit of work.
Yeah.
You got to be dialed with that. And I would say Cade's strengths aren't that at times, Now, he would admit that. But but he's a beauty, and I've always been a fan since when he was a junior. Watching him early on, I was like, oh, this kid's got some serious heat and talent. But in terms of like World Cup racing, I don't know if that's his like full passion,
Yeah.
But we're always like love having him there and love having him around, and we'll always support him.
Well, when we had him on the podcast, I think one of the questions I asked him was, if you could only win one, it was World Cup overall, World Champs, or Rampage, and he went Rampage.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. No, for sure. And he has the ability to definitely compete at Rampage. That's no question. So we'll see if it happens this year, and I don't know if he'll get in this year or not, but he definitely deserves a wild, or not a wild card, but an invite to try to get in. He's got the talent. There's no question about
Definitely.
that.
100%. Well, thanks very much for coming on the show, Andrew, and best of luck for this season. Do you run the Trek Factory Downhill Instagram? Is that you?
No, that's not me.
Right.
No.
Okay, but that's the best place to stay in touch with everything Trek Downhill.
I think so. Yeah, you can see what's going on. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Great stuff. We'll be back with Jonny Thompson from Fit for Racing in a few moments. Finally tonight, we've got a man with more energy than the Red Bull production factory. We've saved him until the end in case we're tiring. It's Fit for Racing's Jonny Thompson. Welcome to the show, Jonny.
Hi, George and Jack. How's it going?
All right, mate. I was about to apologise for keeping you waiting, Jonny, but then I remembered it's still the 1960s up in Cumbria. You probably won't have noticed. Is Cumbrian like life any different under lockdown?
No, not at all. Everyone's actually going about their business. The news won't get to us till next year anyway. They'll be like, what was that corona thing that happened? I think there was a hotspot, actually. It showed like the 10 worst places, and 4 of them were in Cumbria.
People
so,
not caring.
Let's get into it then. Which riders are you working with at the moment, Jonny? Which World Cup riders?
Oh, I've got a list, but actually just got off a Zoom call with Silas Grady. So we've got the Miranda team, Portuguese team, we've been working with this year. So that's an exciting new addition. And then obviously Adam Brayton and Jack Redding, 2 local boys, which is really handy for me. But we do a lot of remote coaching of people all over the world. So we've got a handful of decent riders. But I mean, the majority of the people that follow us are everyday riders. I know we're talking pros right now, but yeah, I'd say we've got George Gannicott, Jack's old teammate. Obviously Dan, Jack's current teammate.
Shout out to George, actually. He's George Gannicott has just his girlfriend is pregnant. He's found out a week or so ago. So shout out, George. Congratulations again.
Congratulations, George. Yeah.
Hope you can continue riding your bike.
Yeah,
quite difficult.
A different kind of lockdown.
Jack, you sound a bit smug there, mate.
Hey,
I'm not having children yet until I'm done riding my bike.
it's time. Wait a minute. Oh shit, I'll do that.
And has the lockdown affected your riders' kind of preparations in the same way? Have they all been under the same restrictions, or?
Well, as I say, all around the world, riders that we train, and restrictions have been different. But at some point or other, they were all pretty much in their house. So they had to do body weight, or some guys were lucky and had gyms, like Jack. He's got a well-kitted out gym. So lots of adaptations to be made. So the general program that people follow, we adapted it immediately and had a body weight version, and then the regular program for those who had equipment. But surprising how many people couldn't access even a dumbbell and had to just rely on body weight stuff. But now, different countries are relaxing, getting back into the Germany. I think German guys a couple of weeks ago got back into the gym. The Americans with restrictions. Here, not quite. I know there's some outdoor training going on, but we're just keeping safe. And it has affected people massively. But, you do what you can and you adapt. We're experienced in the game, and there are things you can do. And I always like to say that, like with an injury, there's opportunity there to address an area in a different way that might give a response that surprises you and address a weakness that you didn't even have. So for a lot of guys, they're going to come back on and they might realize that there's been something that they've neglected for a little while and then find, oh, wow, that feels different, and turn it into a positive.
Yeah. Nina Hoffmann said exactly that earlier on in the podcast, that she'd had the shoulder injury and off the back of it looked at a lot of mobility stuff, and she's improved her whole body just off the back of that negative happening. So
yeah, you do focus a lot more on the things that are important. And when something's taken away from you because of an injury, then it's a good time to start thinking, wow, I'm not indestructible. What is it that I can do to protect myself? And then there's the opportunity of education around that, and you start looking after yourself, particularly as you get older. You know, it's important to stay in the game as long as you can, and with that is health as a foundation. And a lot of people, especially teenagers, you know, they can get away with eating whatever they like, training minimal, or if not, you know, just riding the bike, enjoying themselves, but then it catches up. And a lot of people are like, yeah, you can perform well on a bike just by riding your bike, which is fair enough. But as you get older, it does become more important to look after yourself in other ways, so you're able to ride your bike for longer, particularly at a high level, you know.
Yeah. Going back to the just the pro riders that you coach, Jonny, obviously you've said that I've got access to a gym, which I do, and that's been really handy. Have a lot of the pros that you coach had gyms to train with, or have you been having panicked emails saying, what can I do with a tin of beans for the next 8 weeks?
Yeah, quite a few, to be honest. And because we spend a lot of time on the general program, it's you see it as like, there are principles within strength and conditioning that are relevant for pretty much all athletes. And then you can hone it down into specialisms, which is what we've done for riders. Yeah. And when you start talking about individual program, that's kind of the icing on the cake. So in this time when racing is quite far off, then we've spent a lot of time around programming the best program we can do for a rider, a downhill rider. And we've pushed them onto that program because we've thought a lot about what can you do to address all strength and mobility throughout the body without neglecting any areas. And because of that, I couldn't possibly do that for every single rider. Wow. So it's put them onto the body weight program because we've put so much effort into that. And then anything in addition, so if they have a dumbbell, then we can advise around how can use body weight. And then at each stage, there's different adaptations depending on the available equipment. So let's just say, for instance, a squat, a back squat. We know how important it is to be able to squat a decent amount of weight, but with no weight whatsoever, we'll switch onto a single leg pistol squat, which has different benefits. You know, it's better in some way than a heavy weighted squat, but generally not the same. So in between all of that is how much weight can you carry on, like, in front of you, and then what's an appropriate weight to be able to go double legged. Do you know what I mean? So
I do. Yeah,
lots of stages within it.
Okay. With obviously, I'm used to the Fit for Racing program, but with a lot of people who see things that go on the social media for the Fit for Racing stuff, why is standard bodybuilding work, bodybuilding movements not really any good for mountain biking?
Simple answer is reverse engineering. So if you look at strength, you know, it means different things to different people. But what we want to see strength as is a whole holistic ability, and with it function. So if you think about building strength in a muscle, then that muscle on its own could be strong. But if it was stronger than the opposing muscle, then you create imbalance, and therefore the function is reduced. So what we're after is a functional athlete, not one that is strong in particular small areas. Yeah. And to get that function, we much prefer big compound movements that actually stress the body more, and then create things like core strength. Bodybuilders now that were massive in the 90s, like Ronnie Coleman, you basically can't walk. Yeah. they didn't ever carry weight. Well, actually, Ronnie Coleman's a bad example because he did squat a lot. But a lot of them, they don't actually carry that weight anywhere. They isolate arms, shoulders. You might be like, I'm doing a back day today.
Yeah.
As soon as you have a disconnect between your hips and your upper body, then your function is reduced. And particularly as a rider, you know, you can be strong shoulders for endurance and you're like, yes. And then you do some leg raises for your legs. And then all of a sudden you have these two more than capable areas with a disconnect to each other. And then you don't have the structure.
Nice.
So you're that functional athlete.
It fits in really well to something I said to Dan today, my junior, that we were out doing some times training on the bikes, and we were talking about training and whatever, and I'd said that you can be the strongest guy in the gym, but if you can't ride a push bike, then that strength is pointless. And we're doing such a dynamic sport. When you ride a mountain bike, you're moving all the time, the bike's moving under you. And if your gym work is very dynamic as well and making your body move in similar ways, then that's only going to then improve the way you're then going to move on the mountain bike. So
it is exactly that. So what we're doing in the gym is having a real exaggerated version of the stresses that you have on the bike. And so that then you can strip that back. So like at this stage in this off season, we'll call it, we're getting a bit closer to being able to get race ready. But you want to strip those areas back and make sure that you have no imbalances between, you know, capacity, strength, different types of strength around your body, you know, short energy systems, long, and then you're really taking the pieces apart to put back together. Not like bodybuilding, but the performance metrics of fitness that contribute to you being a rider. Yeah. Now you can take that to an extreme and say, right, well, to be a rider, I need to be the best squatter, and I need my wattage to be this, and I need that and that. And the reality is, to get there might be detracting you so much from actually riding and the purpose that you're doing it for. I mean, then you become the best power output and the best squatter, presser, this and that. And everything on paper puts you as a high performer. And you get on the bike and you shit.
Can't ride that rock garden or... Yeah,
exactly. It has to complement what we're doing it for. You know, my job is a strength and conditioning coach. That does not mean that you should do exactly what makes me a coach for strength and conditioning. It's like, you're a rider. How do you ride? And we're talking high level here, right? How do you ride? What's best for you for the volume of riding? And so that you feel you get enough practice, skills acquisition, and all of that. And then where do we slot in the strength and conditioning to complement that? Yeah. And is there a massive glaring deficit in something physical for you that we can maybe take a little bit out, identify it, attack it, put you back in, and then is he riding better? And ultimately, we're not Tour de France athletes. We're not engines pedaling. You know, we are mixed martial artists. And you could have the heaviest punch on the planet, and then some guy could come and knock you out because you've done nothing else but practice a heavy punch. Accuracy and speed and dynamic and actually practice, you know, having the ability, the mental, the confidence of riding your bike.
So you've got your riders up to peak fitness. Lockdown comes along and no one kind of has any idea how long it will be before we go racing. What was the kind of strategy from a fitness perspective? And was it the same for every rider?
No, it ends up being very different because for a rider that's had something taken away from the opportunity, it's been taken away. It's a heavy hit. There's lots of preparation. There's lots of things going on. And training means different things to different people. Like Jack, it's a form of meditation, escape, self-harm, whatever. But it's a positive mental space. So
he loves it.
Jack's going to go in. He's going to overtrain. I'm fine with that, you know.
Bring it on.
If he feels in control in the gym and he enjoys it, then I'm not going to stop him, you know. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there are people that are just like, well, I've got nothing to work for. And I'm just going to enjoy myself on my Xbox. Well, of course, there's going to be some encouragement not to get absolutely stale, but there's not as much push. And so I'm seeing coaches say, we're forcing time off. I don't necessarily agree with that, particularly in a time where no one really knows what's going on.
Yeah.
And you have to allow people to do what makes them feel safe and in control. Because ultimately, your mental state is going to be the thing that affects you more than your physicality in those early stages.
Yeah. So what about the other riders that you look after who aren't kind of World Cup level, who are training here for nationals? Is it the same approach?
Yeah, well, I have tried to promote a general physical preparedness program. And that is basically one that doesn't peak for a season. It is one that anyone can follow at any time. And week on week, you would become better physically on paper to ride your bike. So that way, people can be spinning the plates of all elements of fitness without being like, right, well, I don't have an end date, so I can't work back from that and say, well, I need to do my base strength or base cardio and then this and then that periodized approach. And what we've seen actually from a more CrossFit style training program, that periodization isn't necessarily the best way, particularly for guys that are still riding through the season. A lot of sports, people just completely shut off. They don't do anything at all. And periodizing it is a peak, and there are strategies around but as we said, riders are very dynamic. They have a lot of stresses. It's not a single modality thing. So we can't train that science-based training in a linear way to a peaking point. So this general physical preparedness, this continual improvement with fluctuations within smaller cycles of maybe 4 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. It's not an annual thing. So that way people can see benefits, and that keeps them positive as well. In times when they can't be on the bike. And then hopefully, as soon as, it could be tomorrow, Boris Johnson's like, you can get out on your bike again. And then you go out and you're like, well, shit, right. I was ready. I am physically in a good position now. So then it's just practice to pick up from where you left off, skill and confidence wise.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Definitely. Dan said the same today. I think, I can't remember when we got Dan on the program, but he's 18. It's probably 4 or 5 months ago now. And his words were something along the lines of, oh, I'm glad I can get up the climbs fast now. I'm not a fat fuck anymore. And I think
I'm going to put that on my marketing campaign, Jack.
And I laughed at him. And he thought he was quite a fit young 18-year-old before he got on the Fit for Racing program. And yeah, I think he's lost about 6 kilos in weight that was fat and put maybe a kilo or two of muscle on. And now he's stronger on the downhills and he's lighter and fitter on the uphills. And like you say, that gym work just goes hand in hand with the bike work, and you win on.
And I think the importance as well is that it's not a chore. So we try really hard to keep it exciting, keep it varied. That also has lots of benefits. If we can vary it, it's not a scattergun approach where we're just picking random shit. There's science-based principles within it. But a lot of time goes into keeping it varied and exciting for riders. And when we're working with riders at the top level, that thing that excites Jack might not excite whoever else. Yeah. And so we have to do a bit of balancing act. Like, on paper, what is the best exercise in the reps and a scheme, and what's the rest between each training session? And then you become a robot. You're basically in a lab, and all of this information comes to you. And it was actually a motocross guy had been coached off somebody, no names, and then he'd had literally 2 months off, and he'd come back in. So he got tested, had 2 months, he didn't train at all. Went back in, got retested. He's like, he's still making progress. This training program is definitely working for you. He actually did nothing at all. So you can actually write down, you can spend so much time analyzing the science and giving the best program. But ultimately, is the athlete going to do it? That is stage one.
Yeah.
Does it excite them? And then, right, what can we do with that? And then how much time is that taking away from riding? And all of the stuff that keeps them excited about being a downhiller,
Yeah.
you know?
So the UCI's released the dates for 2020 now. It's 8 races in 8 weeks. You talked before about it being an ongoing thing, kind of fitness. How do you prepare a rider at the top level to race 8 times in 8 weeks? Is that periodization kind of thing? Do you zoom in for that?
Yeah. So the periodization that we're using for that schedule right now with a handful of guys and girls is that we have a very solid strength base, which is a little bit more on the volume side. So we want a really resilient rider to be going into those 8 weeks. What I mean by resilient is that they can afford to lose strength and some performance because of the stresses that go with the travel and the hormonal effects. You know, it's a stressful time, a lot of adrenaline. And we need resilience for that, so that then when you're into the latter weeks where there's going to be races, 5 days of hard, you know, back-to-back racing, the resilient ones are the ones that are going to dominate there, resilient mentally and physically. So they know that, well, I'm not at my peak, but shit, when I'm not at my peak, I'm still better than the majority guys because of the work that I put in.
And during those 8 weeks, will it just be kind of rest between the races?
Yeah, rest, mobility, and again, looking back, what keeps people good mentally?
Yeah.
And with small adjustments in what we prescribe physically, what we don't want to do is overstress.
Yeah.
So especially in the early weeks, because you can't undo it once you've gone because of the condensed nature of this season. You can't be like, well, shit, that didn't work. By doing like Tuesday and Wednesday heavy squats, that was fine for week 2 and 3, but then I was fucked and that was it, season over.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is like really rein it back in, but do enough that makes people maybe on the more, how would you say it? Like, I don't want to say panicky. I want to say more like a sense of urgency about it, a sense of control around the things that can control, often then goes into training. I want to kind of rein it back and keep that function. We'll always come back to what's the function of the rider? How can we complement the function for what's coming up? So if it's the next weekend and it's Tuesday, Wednesday, what are we doing those days? Increasing function. Is that mobility? Is it some banded work? Is it a little bit of weight and moving in many directions? Is it getting your heart rate up? Is it testing your intensity with a 10-second sprint every 2 minutes, 5 rounds? And that you can recover from. So we can sensibly do that without, because we don't want to make progress. We just want to slow the decrease in performance, which is inevitable. And this, what we're talking about, is training, which will only be a part of it. And there's going to be sleep, a massive thing, and nutrition, huge as well.
So the last 2 rounds are double headers, so it's going to be 5 days riding in a row. So practice day, and then seeding day, race day, seeding day, race day. How do you prepare for that? 'Cause that's like Marines type stuff.
Yeah, that is. In a physical way, which the way we train also trains mental resilience, is that we will replicate some of that in training days. So it could be that we keep riders safe and replicate a couple of heavy riding days, followed by multiple sessions in the gym for a couple of days. So we can create the stimulus, but we, on the back end of it, keep the safety because it's in the gym in a controlled environment. We wouldn't want to flip that over and be like, right, we've absolutely destroyed you in the gym for 2 days. Now go and ride hard as you can for 2 days and see how you do. No, we want to, and maybe on the 5th day, so it'll be like 2 days hard riding, 2 days, multiple gym sessions. 5th day, be on your bike and be aware of how you feel on it. No crazy runs, but just be aware, because a lot of it is shock, surprise, when you're in a state that you've not been in because of fatigue, and fatigue on top of fatigue.
Yeah.
And then, especially with the adrenaline, you know, your body's not capable of what your mind is telling it to do. But if you've been there and you've sensed it and you felt it, it's not a surprise.
Yeah.
You're aware of it. And then that's the resilience.
Yeah.
On the other side, on those days, that's when there's going to be some crazy shuffling of where people are and lots of surprises one way or the other.
Jack, just a question for you. Have you, if Fort Bill kind of opens, which I think I heard somewhere on social people saying it might do you think you might go up there and try and replicate this? I saw you were trying to do some replication of stuff on your vlog this week, I think. Is that something you might try and replicate, or can you not get to that level because it's not a World Cup?
I mean, we definitely, if Fort William does open and they allow us up there, then we'll 100% be up there, because it's the only place on this little island that we can do proper World Cup practice, really. And yeah, I mean, that would be a really sensible thing to do, to literally just replicate, put the free lap time and stuff out, do the same amount of practice runs roughly as you would do, replicate quali race, and yeah, do that with Dan, and yeah, that's a really good idea, to be fair. So
psychologically, then at least you, like Jonny just said, you know you can do it, if you know what I mean.
It would be more for the fitness. You're never going to replicate that World Cup pressure feeling of a race run, but to get to that 5th day after you've done however many runs, knowing that would be the equivalent of the run of the final race run in Maribor and Loser, to get to that run and go, right, the free lap stuff's out, Dan's on track, I don't want my junior to beat me, and I've now got a leather down here, vice versa, he's on track going, I'm going to beat the old boy. So yeah,
how's that looking, how's that looking, Jack? Is Dan going to beat you this year or what?
I beat him today by 4 seconds on a track 1 minute 20, so he let himself down today.
Right.
He's on the M1 crying at the moment. But no, he's very good, so he's got good potential, and excited to see where he can be. But yeah, George, great idea. I'm going to borrow that one. Don't tell anyone else. Jonny, obviously, like the double header weekends, like they're going to be new to all of us. So, like you just said, I guess a lot of the kind of preparation between the rounds and during the events is going to be quite like reactive, depending on how we're feeling. Do you plan on like heading out to Maribor and Loser to be there with the athletes?
Particularly on those final weekends, then yes. There's a bit of juggling with family. I'll say family, the wife. I mean, she cleared three races that were fine this year, but they were spaced out. Yeah. Now she's been on lockdown. I'm not even going to ask her yet. I'm going to wait till there's light at the end of the tunnel and be like,
just play her this podcast, Jonny.
Yeah.
Stick it on in the car when you're on a long journey. I just want to listen back to this.
Oh God, help me! But I mean, I'll be honest. Yes, I'll definitely get to one. Hopefully, both of those double headers.
Yeah.
But I have broken it to her that we'll be doing some training camps, which is kind of top secret. But that'll involve. Well, yeah, shit. What? Are we on a podcast or just a call? I won't give any more details, but there'll be a bit of travel anyway. So yeah, I mean, I always intended on going to some races this year anyway.
Yeah.
For me, because of the coaching remotely, I actually don't see any riders in person other than the handful that can make it to the gym. So it's, for me, a good opportunity to actually meet people in person and show my support. It means a lot. It can mean a lot on a weekend like that if someone can turn up that you're not expecting maybe, or just can say the right thing, keep you positive. That can make a big difference.
And you talked before about mental resilience. How big an aspect do you think mental toughness is going to be in those kind of 8 weeks?
Oh, massively. And it depends what your view of mental toughness is. I mean, that mental toughness is, for me, an ability to endure, but not in like a military way. It's have a good plan and endure that.
Yeah.
Have strategies that you've had put in place so you know what's going to come. And with that is the training and the practice. You know what's going to come and how it's going to feel physically. So that eases your mind to being more resilient because you've practiced it. So the resilience comes from just knowing. And that is all of the things that go before it. If you get to an 8-week season like this and you haven't practiced much and you're just relying on, well, I'll be all right when I get there, then, well, you don't know whether you're going to be able to cope. And the thing is, not knowing is a massive drain on your free will. If you're nervous, in doubt, they are the biggest things that are going to get you. So you need to nail down the things that you're fully in control of, ignore the things that you're not, but be aware of how you're going to feel in particular situations. Yeah. So Michael Phelps, when they're talking about visualization, he visualized fucking up because when it happened, he wanted to be prepared. And a lot of guys will say, don't do that because, you know, you hit the tree that you look at. We know that. Yeah. But it's the small adjustments that you make because you practice in your mind with a positive outcome. Yeah. So you visualize the potential mistakes with a positive outcome, then that's practiced and it's mental resilience.
Yeah. Jack, how are you going to approach it? Because with the pace nowadays, you can't afford to kind of go anything less than 100% if you want a good result. But one crash, one injury, and that's the whole season done and dusted when it's all in 8 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, in my race runs, I don't ride in a way that I'm searching for kind of injury anyway, if that makes sense. I'm not like riding on the ragged edge in my race runs. So that wouldn't really be anything that I'd be considering. The main thing for me will be, like Jonny said, having a really good plan so that between the events, because I'm going to do what I'm going to do at the events, like it's a World Cup, whether there's another one the weekend after or not, I'll have my practice strategy that I'll work through, and that will be that. The important thing will be once you're back at the pits on the Saturday or the Sunday after your race run, that recovery period from there to when you arrive at the next World Cup is going to be so important. And for me, someone who runs his own team and has to kind of coordinate pits down and drive in the van, and I'll have to make sure I'm like quite restrained and let my mechanic do most of the work and eat well and sleep, like Jonny said. But yeah, when it comes to the actual racing, it will just be exactly the same. Take each race as it comes, go for that best race run possible every time, and hope that as Jonny says, the fitness is where it should be. So should just be in a good position relative to everyone else.
You mentioned nutrition a bit there, and Jonny mentioned it before. Let's just finish with a bit about diet. I think I'm right in saying Jack's gone vegan this season. Are you a believer in that, Jonny?
Vegetarian, George, before you start. Brush.
So talk to us a bit about nutrition for that 8 weeks.
Well, hey, I am a firm believer in stimulation. So a boost bar and a coffee, if you've not had sugar for 4 weeks, or caffeine, is basically drugs. So I
noticed that. Yeah, I will not have any caffeine for all day, and then just before I went out on a ride yesterday, I was like, right, massive coffee, and you powered me up the first climb. You know,
I do stay off it for weeks before World Cups, so that when I can want to lift, it's there. Otherwise,
so you do. You rely on that stuff because it's there, it's free, it's legal. And why not leverage it when you can? Yeah. And so I've been encouraging people to do that and sample it and trial it and see how you feel. But now with this condensed season, like even when there's 2 days really hard work, I'd always say don't do it on your first day. Save it for your second. But this, don't do it for your first half, 4 weeks, right? Stick to really low glycemic very slow burning energy, and pick-me-ups, maybe have some sugar if you would normally have a coffee and sugar, but be sensitized to it. So for weeks before, nailing down that diet so you're not relying on it as a pick-me-up on every day, because hey, I have 3 coffees before lunch because I'm just in that zone. And it'll be hard to break it, but when I do, I have 1 coffee and I'll be bouncing off the wall. It's exactly like that. What we don't want to do is peak too soon, because with that stimulation becomes more difficult recovery. And it's going to be essential to get that recovery. And with caffeine, that adrenaline, and it does spike you a little bit on the dangerous side when we're talking about being prepared so soon after. Yeah. So I'd say save it for as long as you can, sustain a good, healthy, low glycemic diet, vegan or whatever, but just save those more dangerous strategies for when you absolutely need it. Because when you do it, it's going to be difficult and you might not be prepared for the effects afterwards, especially on top of adrenaline that you're feeling anyway.
Well, I have to say, Jonny, I'm sat here feeling pretty smug right now. I spent that whole off season looking at everyone killing themselves down the gym, eating healthily, all for nothing. We've got 14 weeks to go to the start of the season. What could I realistically achieve in 14 weeks?
Drop a cup side.
Yeah.
Forget it. We all know I'm not going to bother. So
you could achieve great things, George. Give it a chance.
Well, yeah, we'll see.
Lifestyle. Wow.
Thanks very much for coming on the show, Jonny, and for injecting a bit of much-needed energy at the end there. At Fit for Racing, is that the best place to follow you guys?
Yeah, Instagram or Google Fit for Racing. Hopefully, we'll be top of the page. It's a 4 with a number 4.
Yeah.
4 Racing.
And you've got a lot of stuff on YouTube, haven't you?
Yeah, actually, I'm lacking at the moment. This lockdown's been terrible because I can't be seen at the gym, and basically I rely on shredded riders in action. When I don't have them, I can't do anything. I got my wife to film me doing some bodyweight crap in my front room. It got on Pink Bike, but it's not ideal.
Well, just before we go, I'd like to formally apologise for setting off all the fire alarms in your gym when we filmed the video there in March.
That was amazing.
I did find the exercise difficult, but I genuinely wasn't trying to burn the place down, and any remarks along those lines were purely said in jest. I have the drive in my possession now, so I'll get that edit finished ASAP, and hopefully everyone will enjoy the team launch video.
Nice.
Keep your eyes on Instagram at Making Up the Numbers Racing for that, and I'm sure you'll share it on yours, Jack, as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Just Jack Redding _MTB.
Yeah.
That's where you'll find me.
I think it's pretty fair to say we're excited for the season, Jack.
Oh yeah, 100%. As we said before, like it's given everybody something to aim for now after the period of not having a clue what was going on. So yeah, let's just cross our fingers and hope that when we actually get there, the season looks like something like what they've put on the calendar now.
Cool. Well, I hope everyone's enjoyed tonight's show. Thanks very much to our sponsors for the podcast, Hope Technology, Revolution Bike Park, Schwalbe, and SingletrackWorld.com. We'll be back very soon.